Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your Queer Video Game Podcast. This is episode 26, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I am a transgender and bisexual woman, and my pronouns are she, her. So, for the first half of this episode, it's just me to cover the news, mainly because there's a lot of it, and if I had a guest on, which I really like to have a guest on, so there's like a bit of a difference of opinion, another take on things. But there's so much news this week that I think if I had a guest on, we'd be here for 2-3 hours, and we just don't have time for that this week. Plus, I don't know if you can tell through the sound of my voice or not, but I've had a long and busy week, so I might sound a little tired. That being said, I am excited to talk about it because the headlines are actually really interesting. The first one I've got up this week is Ubisoft is enabling a team of lawyers to go after people online harassing their game devs over the new Assassin's Creed. Plus, there's some reassurances over the Scopely-Pokémon GO purchase, which we discussed in the previous episode, so please go check that out if you missed it. That's episode 25. And of course, we also have a whole bunch of other headlines. And one of the bigger ones this week that's really exciting for me, actually, is that there are a bunch of queer games in the Day of the Dev San Francisco event, which just happened. And of course, like I mentioned, so much more. In the second half of the episode, I'm going to be joined by a friend of mine, Shivani, who's a bisexual woman and retro game collector. So please stick around for that. But before I jump into the news, I have a few quick favors to ask. If you like this podcast, please consider leaving a comment or review on your preferred podcast platform. True Avatars has only been rated a handful of times across all the podcast platforms, and I've started receiving a handful of comments so far, but no reviews yet. It not only helps with visibility for the podcast, but it also helps me to know what you like and don't like, so I can improve it as I find my footing. I know this is already episode 26, but it still feels very new to me, so hearing what people think is really important. Also, please consider following True Avatars, a queer video game podcast, wherever you do your doom scrolling. There are accounts on Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at True Avatars. You can also find the podcast on the official website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. Okay, let's jump into the news. So as I mentioned, the first headline, it comes from Insider Gaming. Ubisoft has prepared lawyers for AC Shadow's anti-harassment plan, it's claimed. So I'm just going to read straight from the article here for the first little bit. Assassin's Creed Shadows has already faced mass blowback, which has almost always been related to Yasuke, the African samurai representing one half of the game's dual protagonist operating model. Ubisoft is no stranger to facing aggression online at the hands of keyboard warriors, but the chatter around Assassin's Creed Shadows has been much more volatile than with any other game in the series. In the report from BFM TV, it was claimed by unnamed Ubisoft employees that an anti-harassment plan has been presented to the CSE in Canada, the Communications Security Establishment. It's an initiative from Canada. There's a team that monitors networks and acts quickly in the event of a targeted attack. Unlike what we've had before, this is serious. Messages posted by internet users on X, Reddit, or even videos on YouTube will be closely monitored by a dedicated unit in order to respond quickly to the slightest problem. Lawyers are already ready to file complaints in the event of proven harassment. Another claim stressed that Ubisoft has ordered a social media blackout of sorts, advising employees not to mention that they work at the company online to avoid harassment. Okay, so that ends the quote from the article that I've pulled. I think it is messed up that this is even necessary. But that said, it's a good thing that they're doing it because honestly, I'm surprised it's taken them this long, to be honest. Even though it's not really clear what specific harassment or targeted attacks they're worried about, or why these and to be honest, I'm not sure why these attacks are worse this time around. But at the same time, I'm surprised it has taken them this long to take legal action, because if there was, anonymity on the internet makes people emboldened to do and say really horrible things sometimes. And the fact that they have the power to find out who these people are, to send cease and desist, to threaten legal action, if people knew that they weren't truly anonymous online and that there was this kind of recourse that was possible, it might have stopped people from doing this kind of thing sooner. And to be honest, it remains to be seen that this will actually stop people. But it is definitely worth a try. And if it does work, I am going to be wondering why they haven't done this sooner. I know Riot Games has taken a similar approach, which I've talked about in, I think, episode 10, wherein they'll ban players for bad behavior that occurs outside of their games. And you're probably thinking, and especially in both these cases, is this an overreach? And I think some people will view this as overreach to some extent. But I think the toxicity and the boldness of that toxicity from ill-intentioned players has gone too far for too long. And I think companies doing what they can to protect their employees and their player base is a really good thing. Like I said, I do wonder exactly what's triggered this time and why it's needed this time. Why now and not 10 years ago? Because this kind of harassment's been going on for a very long time, as long as the internet's been around, especially since game developers and entertainment producers and just IPs in general have responded to fans and admitted that they listen to fans online, it's definitely emboldened fans to have more of a voice. And in some cases, it's a good thing, where fans are respectful but determined, to get something fixed or changed for the better. Like, for example, Sonic the Hedgehog, when they made the movie, Sonic looked ridiculous. And so there was outcry from the fans. And I'm sure there were probably some death threats from some fans, but for the most part, it was very positive, constructive, like, please change this. This looks awful kind of criticism. Whereas everything I've heard about Assassin's Creed Shadows criticism has been purely racism and misogyny. People are either mad that there's a black man in a Japanese game, or people are mad that there's a woman in a masculine-esque game. But again, like I said, this has been going on for a long time. Ever since, it's been known that brands listen to their fans and have started engaging with their fans on the internet. And now too, that people have realized that they can contact people who work on these games, that work on these movies, to actually like communicate with them and harass them and threaten them. I know when there was the Pokemon Terra leak a few months ago, which I don't really talk about too much because a lot of the information in that leak has not been verified. But I do know that at one point, a lot of Game Freak employees, like the person who leaked all the information, he hid information about the future games, but he didn't hide all the information about Game Freak's employees, like addresses, emails, phone numbers were leaked and doxed. And so it just makes me wonder that if all this stuff is happening, like what's taken them so long? Fans have gone too far for too long. And I think this is a good thing. If it stops people from getting harassed, threatened, people reaching out to people's personal information, then this is kind of necessary. Anyway, I've been rambling a bit, but let me know what you think in the comments too. Whatever social media channels you use for us. I prefer Blue Sky personally, so reach out to me on Blue Sky. This goes without saying too, and this is my last point, but don't harass or threaten game devs, like ever. Don't threaten employees, content creators, other players, anyone really. There's nothing happening in a video game that's worth threatening, doxing, harassing. Anything that requires legal action, it's not worth doing, or legal reaction rather. So anyway, we've got a bunch of quick headlines moving on. So the PlayStation exclusive Knights of the Old Republic remake is still in development. Not much has been heard since this game was announced almost 4 years ago. I think September 2021 was its announcement, so we're at 3.5 years to be specific. But apparently it is still in development, according to 2 people from Saber Interactive, where the game is being made. They didn't say much else, but it is nice to know for Star Wars fans who are worried that the game has possibly been canceled since. It has not. But I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying this, is that games take way longer to make. And they cost way more to make, especially AAA games, which I'm sure this is going to be AAA, given that it's a PlayStation-funded exclusive. And this game has a lot of expectations. It's a remake of a very beloved game. So they're probably just taking their time to make sure it's special, if I had to guess. Assuming there aren't production problems going on behind the scenes, but we won't be privy to that information until it comes out, probably. So, moving on, PC Gamer. This comes from PC Gamer because the original source is locked behind a paywall. Lego is going to make its video games in-house from now on. So for a long time, the bulk of Lego's games have been made by British developer Traveller's Tales, with a few games made by other developers, of course, but there are a lot of Lego games. So I do have to wonder if Lego is truly ready to be able to take on the quantity and quality that fans have come to expect from Lego video games. I feel like every year there's at least one new Lego game. At one point, there were several per year on all kinds of different platforms, and when there were still dedicated handheld consoles, there'd be a handheld version that's developed kind of separately from that game as well. And obviously, one studio was doing the bulk of these games, but for a studio for Lego itself, who's not experienced in making these games, you have to wonder if they're ready for this, and how they're going to manage the volume going forward, or if they're going to take a step back and really evaluate how many Lego games we need. Maybe there's an oversaturation. I don't know, but it's also really strange to me too that Lego is really famous for working with other companies dealing with licensing. For example, there's Star Wars and Mario Lego products, and myriad other brands have collaborated with Lego. I think they're doing Pokemon next year. So it's just weird to me that they would want to bring something in-house like this when they're already so used to working with other companies. So it does seem a bit contradictory to me, but my other concern is what Traveller Tales is going to do, given that their entire output for the last decade And I'm kind of making a joke of this a little bit, but I don't mean to. But I do wonder what they're going to do since their entire output has been Lego games for the last 10 years. It's more of like a ridiculous laugh than it is to be mocking Traveler's Tales, which I don't mean to do. Their games are great, all the Lego games. It's just that's all they've made. So you do have to wonder, like, where do they go from there if they're not going to be making Lego games anymore? This comes from Nintendo Life, this next headline. Game Informer, the famed longtime gaming publication, is teasing a comeback. From the article, after 33 years in the biz, the iconic publication Game Informer closed its doors last August, with all of its staff laid off in the process. But now, 8 months on, it seems that a comeback may be on the cards. At least, that's what's being teased by a recent video from the outlet. The short clip slowly zooms in on the site's final farewell message, the one you can still find on the now mostly defunct Game Informer website, as some mysterious synths and chatter happen in the background. A glitching line of code appears at the bottom of the screen stating, and I'm going to try to read this to the best of my ability, but brackets console.writeline, continue question mark, before a March 25th, 2025 date appears in front of a black background. So that's really soon. That end quote. So this is good. This is a good thing. Like, I don't see, I mean, obviously GameStop owns Game Informer and that's its own issue, but this Game Informer has been around for a very, very long time, like 33 years, as was stated in the article. So I do remember listening to one podcast at one point, and they had archives from so many different video games, like from over the years, from devs and publishers sending them like dev kits, not dev kits. What's the word I'm looking for? Like they send it to you in a press kit, not a dev kit, a press kit. The press kits and like developer interviews and all kinds of like behind the scenes stuff. And I remember this podcast, I think it was the Video Game History podcast, that was going through it, all this stuff at Game Informer, and there's just so much, like decades of stuff. Like it would take years to go through it all. I'm not sure what happened to all that stuff for the record, but so Game Informer closing is like, it just feels like E3 shutting down. Like, it's a big deal. Now, I do think this tease is obviously, it's very clear what's happening, but I also listen to All Things Nintendo, which is Brian Pichet's Nintendo podcast, and he started it when he worked at Game Informer and took it independent before Game Informer shut down. But for months on this podcast, like pretty much every episode, he was talking about how he was looking for work. And I didn't notice at first, but I did think about it. And recently he stopped talking about that. And I think if he had a new position somewhere, he would have been talking about what that was. But instead, he's just gone silent entirely on it while doing his podcast. And he was also very vocal about the fact that Game Informer shut down and how sad he was. So I have to think, like, again, if he did tease something on his Blue Sky, but I think if Game Informer wasn't coming back, he would have said something. And I think the fact that he hasn't said anything at all means it's probably on its way back. You know, if he's not looking for work, he's probably working at Game Informer again, is what I mean to say. So I look forward to Game Informer coming back. I do hope it is restored to its former glory and it isn't a shell of its former self. The fact that it seems like they're hiring the staff they let go last summer, at least some of them, is very, very, very reassuring. There's nothing worse than a brand coming back, or a magazine or a company coming back. And like, for example, here in Canada, we have an equivalent to the store like Target. It's called Zellers. I used to actually work for Zellers a long time ago as a teenager. But at one point, the company that owned Zellers, even though they shut Zellers down, they brought it back. But when they brought it back, they didn't bring back the store. They just brought back the branding and a little bit of the merchandise with the logo on it in the corner of another store. And that's not the same thing to me. So it really kind of like, and that's just one example of things, but it's all my tired brain can think of right now. But if Game Informer doesn't go back to the way it was right before it shut down, I think it's, or it doesn't return to something better than that, I think it will be a waste personally. But it coming back at all can be considered a good thing for sure. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that. These are supposed to be quick headlines. Moving on, the next headline comes from Polygon. Indie game's lesbian toggle makes it hilariously unplayable. An indie game called Blowbun, or I guess Blawbun, has implemented a setting to remove its lesbian content, which makes the game impossible to play. So Blawbun is an indie puzzle game about a blob-like bunny who is also a lesbian. So turning off the lesbian content just removes the character, which makes the game unplayable since you can't control the character. Jess, the developer, is plural and had this to say from the article. It's been really funny so far seeing people's reactions, whether it be confusion because they didn't realize what the toggle was doing, laughing because they figured out exactly what the toggle was doing, or, in rare instances so far, being upset about it. It was really important to us, though, especially in the current political climate, to put this in the game, both to represent ourselves, our friends, and many people out there, as well as to filter out the kind of people who we don't want playing our games anyways. So, end quote. I love this kind of passive-aggressive response to bigots who want to remove inclusivity in video games. If people don't want queer characters in games, they should just go play other games. It's literally that simple. Even if, you might argue, like, why does this puzzle game need a lesbian bunny? Who cares? Who cares? Honestly, if queer characters in a video game bother you, and we've seen stats to say that, for the most part, queer characters do not bother the average gamer. But, like, again, just go play other games. There are so many games that don't touch on sexuality at all, or are very cishet in their nature. Just go play one of those. I'm sure there's myriad other puzzle games, but shout out to Jess for doing this. I think it's awesome and hilarious. Another quick headline here. Life is Strange Double Exposure wins an award for social media impact, but nobody is there to claim it. So back in episode 19, I mentioned that the only queer game to get a nomination at the GDC Awards, that's the Game Developers Conference Awards, was Life is Strange Double Exposure, and it was nominated in the social impact category. Well, it won, and due to all the layoffs at Deck 9, nobody was there to accept the award. And again, I'm laughing, but I'm laughing out of the absurdity of this because, like, again, the layoffs, I've been tracking a lot of them as we've been going through this podcast, and there's been a lot. There were a lot in 2023, there were a lot in 2024, there continues to be a lot in 2025. And I'm not sure about the sales numbers for Life is Strange Double Exposure. My personal take on the game was that it was not a very strong game, although it did have a lot of great queer representation, which is the only thing that I think is worth mentioning about that game. But the weakness of the story and the narrative and just the general gameplay aspect probably means the game didn't sell well, which probably didn't help in preventing the layoffs, unfortunately, not justifying them. But anyway, this quote comes from the Kotaku article that I pulled, or at least these are quotes from the various devs that were laid off but were talking about this award. So someone here said, "It's fitting that nobody was there to accept the GDCA award that Double Exposure won because we all got laid off, LOL," wrote former Deck 9 narrative designer Elizabeth Bayou on Blue Sky. "A bunch of us are at GDC, but we didn't know we were even nominated, so nobody was prepared to accept anything." GameFile's Stephen Totillo, who was backstage at the time, added, "Nearly every game that won had people coming through, beaming with their trophy in hand. It stood out that for Life is Strange, which won the Social Impact Award, there was no one." Other winners last night included Metaphor Refantagio for Best Narrative, Astrobot for Best Technology, and Balatro for Best Game. Bayou confirmed that members of the development team who were attending GDC separately did eventually manage to go collect the award, but for fans and others in the industry, it's a grimly ironic reminder of the current precarious state of the game industry, especially for story-driven adventure games, a once popular genre that struggled to find sustainable success in recent years. To be honest, I don't know what to say about this other than it's very fitting of the time we live in right now with layoffs, the game industry in general, and of course the way governments and populations of the world are treating queer people and queer content, that this happened. It's also very sad. When I say fitting, I mean sad. But representative of the times, for sure. But anyway, that's it for quick headlines. I have two more that are kind of bigger, so I'm going to jump into those now. Polygon conducted an interview with Pokémon GO's senior product director, Michael Staronka. So, last week, we discussed the potentially grim future for Pokémon GO. The short of it is that Scopely, the predatory game company that makes Monopoly Go, has purchased Niantic, the company that makes Pokémon GO. There's a lot of Go in there. I feel like I repeated the same words many times in there. But anyway, it's no secret that Scopely's games are full of advertisements and microtransactions, far beyond what Pokémon GO has ever implemented. Fans and ourselves were concerned that Scopely would be changing Pokémon GO for the worse. I recommend going out to check out episode 25 for the full discussion between myself, Amy Lynn, and Lloyd Lloydster. It's very interesting. It's much more nuanced and more in-depth. But anyway, Polygon has interviewed someone who works on Pokémon GO, Michael Staronka, and he seems to think that Pokémon GO is not going to change very much. In fact, this interview initially comes across as very hopeful. And before I get on to my take on this interview, I'm going to pull some relevant quotes. It's not all the quotes, just the ones that I felt relevant to the podcast. If I read the whole interview, we'd be here all night. But anyway, something that's become really clear to me is how they operate as an organization comprised of lots of different game teams building their total portfolio. He's talking about Scopely. The way they operate is they truly give all of their game devs full autonomy to make the best decisions that they can for their games. There's not really a lot of top-down executive level guidance or pressure on any of the different game teams. They're really there to do their best to support the different teams and make sure that we have all the resources we need to be as successful as we can. A little bit further down, he says, we're going to be able to continue to operate Pokemon Go the same way we always have, with the same practices that we always have, and evolve the game in the way that we always envisioned wanting to do. He later says, so of course Scopely are really interested in the fact that Pokemon Go is such a stable business, but almost more than that, they've been really interested to try to learn from us and see what they can take from how we build Pokemon Go, and apply that to potentially other games in their portfolio and future games to come as well. Finally, he says, Scopely really recognizes how unique this game is, and they've told us themselves that they would be foolish to try to change the recipe of what's made this such a huge hit and a success. So yeah, absolutely not. We will not be building into our games any type of obtrusive ads or anything like that. I just really want to reiterate, Scopely as a company, the way that they operate is to give all of their teams the agency to make the decisions that's right for their games, and that is not something that we feel would ever be right for Pokemon Go. So, end quote. At face value, this all sounds very reassuring. Hearing that Scopely recognizes that Pokemon Go has been successful without the advertisements and monetization that Scopely is famous for means that maybe they really are uninterested in changing the game and just milking it the same way that Niantic has been for the last 9 years as their approach going forward. But also, it's important to keep in mind that a lot of Scopely's most successful games use very similar formulas for monetization. So they use ads, pay-to-win monetization, gameplay loops that encourage constant usage, thereby feeding back into these other loops. And their games are incredibly successful. Whereas Niantic has only really had one successful game pop off in a major way, and they've had a few other minor successes, but a lot of cancellations. Scopely has multiple games on the scale and success of Pokemon Go, if not more. So it would be strange to me for Scopely to be hands-off with Pokemon Go when their Monopoly Go strategy clearly works for them. I mean, yeah, Pokemon Go makes a lot of money, but so does Monopoly Go. So even if their current position is to leave it alone, there's no way they don't try adding Monopoly Go style tactics to see if it makes them even more money than their current way. I'm definitely cynical. I don't trust corporations. And maybe they really will let Pokemon Go just operate with full autonomy the way Niantic has been running it, separately from everything else. But all their other games are operated separately with autonomy. And so Mr. Stronka says, at least, but all these games that are quote unquote operated separately, they all use very similar predatory approaches to making money from their player bases. So if you were a money-hungry CEO, wouldn't you want to operate Pokemon Go in a way that makes you the most money possible? Do you really believe that even though he's saying that all these games are operated separately, that that's actually true? Because all these games are operated the same way. So are you telling me that all the dev teams were just like, yeah, we're going to do the exact same thing everyone else is doing with no creativity involved at all? Again, I'm just very, very skeptical. I'm not rooting for Pokemon Go to be ruined. I don't like the idea of another country, especially one like Saudi Arabia, having all my data, especially my location data. That freaks me out. Then again, all of the other countries of the world probably have my data anyway, so like, what am I even complaining about? But I really, I also don't like the idea of a country owning a video game. That just seems weird to me. At least not a game that they created and funded themselves for the purpose of something government related. I don't know. I'm just very, very skeptical. I hope Pokemon Go doesn't change. I'm still probably going to delete my account. I have to get around to getting most of my Pokemon out. And like I said in a previous podcast, I see all my Pokemon as my babies. And the fact that some of those Pokemon can never leave Pokemon Go means they're probably going to be stuck there forever. And that kind of breaks my heart a little bit. I know they're just digital code, but I don't see them that way. It's like leaving one of my pets behind. So that's not going to stop me from deleting my account, but it is going to hurt a little bit more personally. But anyway, that's a dark news story. And the last one of the podcast. One more headline, and this is a good one. This is an exciting one because Day of the Devs San Francisco happened, which is a physical event in San Francisco held by the Day of the Devs to show off upcoming indie games. And among them were several promising queer games. So I thought I would highlight all the queer games I found. And I did my best to find out which ones were queer. Some of them were obvious and had like tags or something in the description indicating queer themes or queer characters. Others I had to dig a little bit for. And some of them might be queer, but I couldn't confirm that. But even though the devs had previously made queer games, the devs themselves were not queer that I could confirm, and there's no confirmation that their future game, their upcoming game that was at Day of the Devs, will also be queer. So I had to kind of pick and choose my battles here to see which ones I could include. Plus, if I included the ones I suspected, it would be a much longer podcast. And I really do want to highlight the games that are very openly confirming they're queer, because there's something to be said in this political climate for games that are wearing their heart on their sleeve, so to speak. So anyway, as always, I will link the relevant Steam pages to all these games in the show notes. So if you're curious at all about any of these, or even the rest of the games at Day of the Devs San Francisco, I recommend going into the show notes, clicking those links. and checking them out, and wishlisting too. So support them, wishlist them, play them when they come out. I don't think any of these games are out yet, but I think I saw a few in Day of the Devs that are out now that came out shortly after that happened last week, but I don't think any of the games I'm talking about specifically have been released. But anyway, the first game is called Altered Alma from 2 Awesome Games. So the Steam summary reads as follows. Altered Alma combines the beloved classic Metroidvania formula with RPG elements, dating sim features, a slick pixel art presentation, and a gripping story. Whether you want to beat up bad guys, find love, or just explore the beautiful cyberpunk cityscape, Neo Barcelona awaits. And so the Kickstarter mentions you can pursue a variety of relationship options tailored to your preferences. Whether you are interested in exploring connections with male, female, or non-binary characters, our game respects your choice. Or you can choose to forge your path without romantic entanglements. The power is in your hands. This level of freedom not only reflects our diverse world, but also ensures that every player's journey is uniquely their own, which I love. So this game looks gorgeous. To be honest, all the games that I'm pulling up here are vibes, they're moods, and they're so pretty to look at. I love the aesthetic of any one of these games, but this game in particular has a gorgeous cyberpunk 2D aesthetic, very similar to Psychroma, not exactly the same, but similar. But definitely go check out the Steam page. I would compare it. They have a list of games and movies they compare it to, but 2 of the ones they mentioned that I think are the most apt are Hollow Knight meets Blade Runner. And there is a demo on Steam actually too, so there is no release date yet, but the Kickstarter rewards are estimated for November 2025, and I know that's not always accurate, it's just an estimation. I think every time I've had a Kickstarter reward with a projected date, it has never met it, so I'm just predicting that maybe it's November 2025, or at least that's what they're hoping for. But the Steam page actually says just coming soon, so. The next game up is called Demon School, all one word. So it's Persona vibes with bisexual lighting. The Steam summary reads as follows. Demon School is a new style tactics RPG where motion equals action. Defeat big weirdos in between the human and demon worlds as Faye and her misfit companions while navigating university life on a mysterious island. So the devs, Necrosoft Games, previously made Hyper Gunsport, which is a queer game. They have tweeted, Demon School says trans rights. And one of the dev team members is a lesbian, one of the key dev team members. So I think the game, this is the only one where I was like not 100% sure, but I think it's likely to be. I think it's likely to be very queer. And the bisexual lighting kind of gives it away the same way that the bisexual lighting did for Lost Records, Bloom and Rage did. There is a demo available on Steam, and it's out Q2 2025. The next game up is called Fishbowl from imissmyfriends.studio. That's all one word, by the way. It has the LGBTQ plus tag on Steam. Yay. The Steam summary reads as follows. Fishbowl is a slice of life coming of age story told over a month. Video call loved ones, work from home, sort through puzzles to rediscover childhood memories, do care tasks, and get to know yourself better one day at a time. So this is an adorable top-down like RPG that's also a visual novel. Like I would actually describe it as like a RPG visual novel. It has no release date, but it looks very cute, very charming. It's much more pastel and quaint colors. I see a lot of light blues and a lot of light pinks. Yeah, it's not really clear how it's LGBTQ+, but the fact that, I don't know, all the characters read kind of queer to me. You know, they're all a little, very unique looking. I don't know how to describe it. Everyone's got dyed hair. Like everyone's got the, the kind of blue hair and pronouns kind of look to them. And I mean that in an endearing way, actually. So I know a lot of people use that as an insult, but that's the read I have on this game. It looks adorable, actually, and I'm going to be checking out the demo this week because it looks really charming. Go check out the page, go check out the demo. It doesn't have a release date currently, but from what I've seen so far, they can take as long as they need because it's adorable, and I'm excited. Okay, this next game I'm really excited for. It's called Bugaboo Pocket. It's from Elytra. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's either Elytra or Elytra. It's spelled Elytra Games. It has the LGBTQ plus tag on Steam, but I was able to find out that it is made by a sapphic couple who fell in love while making games. So the bio from their website reads, Elytra Games was founded by Beth Rosace and Sarah Yu, who are both partners in the studio and in life. Having met a week before COVID lockdown, they bonded over a deep love for video games. They started designing Animal Crossing worlds, including a Taco Bell, so that they could go on virtual dates, and a studio was born. As a result, Elytra Games is focused on creating beautiful worlds that bring people joy and comfort. And the Steam summary for Bugaboo Pocket reads, a virtual pet game starring bugs from land, air, and sea. Play as a research scientist living in a cabin with just your bugs and a pen pal for company. Spoil them with pets, minigames, food, and furniture. Raise and release bugs to help Beetleback Ridge recover from a devastating fire. See bugs in a whole new light, great for people who don't love bugs in brackets yet, and validating for people who already do. Every pet is inspired by a real-world critter. Learn about their life cycles, habitats, and food sources. So I love this. First off, I love everything about this game so far. I love the premise. I love the visuals. The visuals are also very charming. Again, more pixel art. All the bugs look adorable. They have big, cute, glassy eyes. But also, like, I think bugs are severely misunderstood. My partner actually showed me a video, and I think it was millipedes, but it might have been centipedes, explaining, she was like, she's scared of them and she hates them. She wants me to kill them whenever she finds one. But she showed me this video because she's like, look how cute they are. And I'm like, yeah. And I was scared of millipedes or whichever one it was. I mean, I like both, but at the time it was one of them. And in this video, I watched it and I fell in love with them. And I was like, well, I can never kill one of these things again for you. Like I just can't do it. Same way I am with spiders. I've been like, these pets, not only are they cute, not only are they harmless, okay? Like who cares how many legs they have, but also they take care of other pets in your living space. So I don't see why you'd want to kill them. And so if this game does for everyone else that plays it what that video did for me, then that would be great, because I think we should stop killing bugs. Bugs are adorable. This game is adorable. I'm so excited for it. It comes out on April 2nd, which is not too far away, 9 days after this podcast releases. So it comes out on Monday, March 24th, the podcast episode, and then the Wednesday after that, which is coincidentally the same day as the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, this game comes out. And it looks like it's coming to Switch and Steam. So I know what I'm doing with my eShop credits that I can no longer earn from the gold points. I'll be picking up Bugaboo Pocket. Okay, the next game is called Building Relationships. And yeah, so it sounds like building relationships, but it's actually building relationships. Because it's a game about a building in a relationship. It comes from Tanant Games. It has the LGBTQ+ tag on Steam. The Steam summary reads as follows. Experience life as a house in this silly adventure game. Yeah, you heard me correctly. They experience life as a house. Play as a building as you roll, jump, and wave dash across a cozy island. Meet eligible structures, romance them, and experience a bizarre yet oddly familiar story. Or go fishing instead, though we replaced fish with cars to make more sense. Looking at the footage, it is as silly as it reads. It's got kind of like a Nintendo 64 early GameCube visuals, like it's a 3D environment. A little low poly, but still very pretty and charming. The house kind of jumps, bounces around. When it's like in its resting animation, it kind of like bounces back and forth eagerly. I assume the house is, it's got a sexuality, it's got a gender, and that's why the game has the LGBTQ+ tag on Steam. Maybe the house is a girl and you can date other girls, or the house is a boy and you can date other boy houses or whatever. I don't know. I assume it has queer dating options, but it's completely unconfirmed. And all else we really know, I mean, go check this out. I can't even describe it. It looks ridiculous in the best way possible. But all we know about it is that it's coming this year, aside from what I told you. So yeah, go check that out on Steam. And the last game on the list that I found, a game I've known about for a while, but it was part of Day of the Devs. And it's also coming out very, very soon, this week actually, 2 days after the podcast comes out. It's called Spilled. It was developed by one person over several years. This person goes by Lenta. Lenta is a lesbian game dev who lives on a boat, which is interesting because she's also making a game about a boat that cleans up the ocean. So the Steam summary reads as follows. Clean up ocean waste in this short and relaxing game. Recycle, earn coins and upgrade your boat, explore new areas, clean bigger spills, and different kinds of waste. So again, like I said, all these games are moods. This has a top-down, very cute pixel art aesthetic, almost like a painting, like a mix between, I can't even describe it. It looks like a mix between a painting and pixel art, and it looks so pretty. So cute. You got like a little fishing boat, a little trawler. I don't know boat terms. You're gonna have to forgive me. Anyone who's listening is like, Zoe she doesn't even know what the boat she's talking about, but it looks so cute. Looks very charming. There is a demo. I've been meaning to get around to the demo for a while, but I just have not had the time. Every time I find a new queer game, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to add that to my list of games. And then I find a new game and I'm like, okay, I'm going to play that next. And then I got to talk about the game of the week for that podcast. And then it's just like, anyway, so all that is to say is I want to play all these games that I talk about. I really want to play them. I've been meaning to check out Spilled. In fact, I actually did have Spilled load on my Steam Deck, but it like installed on it, but the game wouldn't open. And And then when I was trying to get it working, I just ended up getting very tired and I went to bed because it was all already late at night. It was supposed to be my like cozy game right before bed and it just didn't work, unfortunately. And then I got busy with other things. If Lent is listening to this podcast, I know she follows me on Twitter. I'm sorry, I haven't played your game yet, but I'll probably just pick up the full game this week because it looks so charming. It looks so cute, and I want to support this game. So yeah, if you're not sure, again, check out the demo, but check out the Steam page for sure. And it comes out this Wednesday, so March 26th. This podcast, like I said, comes out March 24th, so 2 days later, 1 week before Bugaboo Pocket. And that's all the games. Yeah, so I think that was about 6 games, which is, I think there were probably... Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 games. I hope I didn't miscount that after literally looking at them all. But anyway, that's actually a pretty good amount of queer games, percentage of queer games compared to, I think there were maybe 30 or 40 games as part of Day of the Dev. So the fact that there were that many is pretty good. I hope there's a few more hidden in there that just weren't openly queer, for example. But yeah, that's all the games. And so anyway, True Avatars, that wraps up this week's headlines. Thank you for sticking around as I get very tired and I'm just like completely drained of energy from my life this month. I hope you'll check out some of the indie games I discussed. Like I said, they're linked in the show notes, so please go check them out. And after this short musical interlude, I will be back on with Shivani to discuss retro game collecting. Hi, True Avatars. Welcome back from the break, and joining me to talk about retro game collecting is my friend Shivani. Shivani is a Canadian Indian bisexual woman. Shivani's pronouns are she, her. How are you doing, Shivani?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm okay. We were just before the podcast started recording, I was just talking about how like we have video going now, but this is an audio podcast. But I've just washed my hair and it's like all crunchy and gross looking right now before I can kind of crunch it out.
It actually doesn't look gross. I think that's just you. I think
maybe it's just me, but I before I would go out in public like this, and now I would be too embarrassed to go out looking like this.
I don't know. I think it looks neat, but maybe you're just too hard on yourselves, though. Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe I am. But actually, I want to ask you about the big collection of VHSs and video games and figures in the background there.
Yeah. So on my right is all of our... I say our because my partner and I collect together. These are our VHS tapes and our DVDs. You can't see because it's at the very bottom, but we also have 2 shelves of Laserdiscs. We do have a Laserdisc player also. They're
so
not
cool.
Thank you.
Do you watch them?
Oh, yeah, all the time. We somehow, this is total sidebar, but somehow in Hamilton, I was able to get a Laserdisc player that like, you don't need to go up and flip the disc for. It has like the automatic mechanism where the laser unattaches itself and then reattaches itself at the top to like play the other side automatically. So you can just sit on your couch and keep watching. It's kind of cool. I don't know. Laser discs are neat. But yeah, on my left is all our video games. Top left corner, that's the entire North American Dreamcast collection. That is every game that's in North America for the Dreamcast. Right.
How long did it take you to get a complete collection?
Well, Keenan started collecting. So my partner started collecting before we met, which was in 2011. But at that point, it was, I think for him, it was just like he needed a video game to play and found a cheap Dreamcast and a couple games. But then when I met him, we would go to video game stores together and like buy stuff. And then we started dating and stuff. But it took, I want to say like, because we finished in 2019, which was, we finished before the 20-year anniversary of the Dreamcast, which is September 9th, 2019. I want to say about 10 years.
Wow,
took 10
that's really
years.
impressive.
Yeah. Shout out to 1UP Games in Hamilton, honestly. Like, they were...
I have to check that place out.
You really do, because I'll talk about them later, because they are such a big, not even sponsor, but like a lot of this collection is because of them.
Yeah, I get a lot of my stuff from a few stores in Toronto. My favorite place to go to, it's not really even in Toronto. It's like on the outskirts of Scarborough. It's called Retro Game Bros. And the two guys that run it are so sweet. And they're so nice. And they remember me by name every time, even though I go like twice a year since they're so far away.
Oh.
So I'm sure 1UP Games, they know you by name too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Mark at 1UP Games. he used to save games like for us that we would like, especially when we were collecting for the Dreamcast. He would like set some games aside and be like, "Hey, do you still need these? Okay, no, then I'll put them on the floor. If you do, they're yours." So it's quite cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And though you've kind of, it sounded like when you were telling the story about how you kind of started dating your partner, that you started buying and collecting games together before you started dating, and then you kind of like, that sounds like that's how you kind of met a little bit. Do you want to elaborate?
Well, we met at university. So that's not how we met, but that is honestly how our friendship flourished. Because we didn't have classes together or anything. And we were both seeing other people at the time because it's undergrad, but we would hang out, and the most fun thing to do was go into the city and walk around and do like 30,000 steps a day because we're early 20s people with nothing better to do, and just pop into every single video game store we can. That honestly is like a major building block of our friendship, of our relationship, whatever, because to this day, when we travel, that's how our travel is planned. Like, for example, when we went to Japan, it was like, what are we doing today? We're hitting this book off, and this book off.
Book off. I miss book off so much.
Yeah, me too. So it would be like, okay, these are the 3 in this whatever neighborhood. So we'll explore the neighborhood and hit up the book offs. Okay, cool. We were in New York. That's how we planned our travel there too. Like, we'll hit up this game store, that game store, and then explore the neighborhood. Even when we were in Montreal like 2 weeks ago, that's how we kind of structured our trip. So going to video game store is like a major part of our relationship.
Sounds like relationship goals, to be honest.
Thank you.
So you collect Dreamcast games. Is there any other console you're collecting for?
Yes. So there's the Sega Dreamcast. Over COVID, we started collecting for the Sega Saturn, the original Xbox. There's SNES. There's PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's the Switch. There's the Wii. And then for handhelds, there's Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color. There's the Wonder Swan. There's the Neo Geo Pocket. There's obviously the DS and the 3DS and the PSP. And I am certain I am missing some.
No, I think, well, from what I can see, you covered it. I think maybe you didn't mention the NES. I see some NES games, but I know you said SNES. But you mentioned a lot of consoles there.
Yeah, there are a lot of consoles.
Obviously, you're not...
N64 also, but we don't
actually
collect for N64. It's more just like cherished games from our childhood. Oh, and obviously the GameCube.
Oh, the GameCube. I had a pretty nice GameCube collection as a kid that I just got over time. And then there was one day, I think it was like, might have been 2009 or 2010. My mom came into my bedroom. She's like, I'm doing a run to Goodwill. Is there anything you want to donate? Like these old video games? And I was like, you know what? I don't have a GameCube anymore. I can't play those. I had Pokemon Coliseum, Pokemon XD, which are like hundreds of dollars now. I think I gave away all my Pokemon DS games. And in one of those games, you know how in the DS cartridges, you can put a Game Boy cartridge as well in the case?
Yeah.
I think I put one of my Pokemon games in there too. And it got donated. So yeah, my DS and and somehow the only DS games that survived till now that I still have are my Nintendogs games.
Oh, I love Nintendogs.
Yeah, I haven't fed those poor things in 20 years.
Same. Oh.
At least they don't die.
That's the only good thing. Because otherwise, it'd be like Neopets all over again.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Tamagotchis can die too, right? Did you ever play Tamagotchis?
I didn't. I had knockoff Tamagotchis that definitely died. But I don't know if real Tamagotchis. I've only ever played knockoff Tamagotchi.
Well, it was hard to find real Tamagotchis at the time when they were big. Like, I remember my grandfather came for me and my brother. He brought us each one, and he had to fight a crowd of he described it as he had to get on the floor and crawl through like a crowd of very angry parents. And then he jumped up, grabbed 2, and then he crawled back out. That's how he describes it. He would embellish a little bit, but
I believe him.
Yeah, I do too. So obviously you prefer physical media. I'm wondering what your take is on, do you collect any digital media at all? Or watch things digitally? Play things too?
I do, but I think that's more out of what the environment is. I like physical media, personally. And the reason I like physical media is because I like the tactile experience. And also, I like knowing that when I buy a video game, I have it. Because, like, we all know of the scandalous digital media and, like, PlayStation changing and, like, removing games and stuff. I don't want that to happen to my games, especially if I like them. So physical media is just more like I have it. Okay, it's mine. Also, nebulously, then I can lend it to people. Like, here you go. Here's literally a copy of whatever. Go play it. Return it to me whenever. Like, I like sharing my stuff with friends and family, so it's easier to do that when it's physical. It's also easier to keep track of when it's physical rather than digital. For me, anyway. My friend who I was telling you about, who is always playing video games all the time, he's very into digital media, and that's like where we butt heads, because Keenan and I are always like, no, physical, and he's always like, no, but digital. So it is what it is. People have their own opinions. I personally like the very tactile experience. Honestly, that's part of why I really like the Neo Geo Pocket, because if you like the joystick of it, like I guess it's the joystick is so clicky and so nice. So for fighting games, you can like feel all of the like quarter circle and half circle stuff. So it's really nice. It feels great. Like, it just, I don't know. It gives me like sensory happiness.
Yeah, I feel that way about a lot of physical media too. They just a known leaker who usually leaks products like a couple days before in advance. I think he's called Billy Coon. I've been waiting for months to find out if Indiana Jones is going to get a physical release. The new Xbox game is, when it comes to PS5, they're going to have it, because when they released it physical on Xbox, the disc was just a key to download it. It didn't have the game on the disc, so it's not even a code to box. They went to the trouble of pressing a disc, didn't put the game on it, just gave you the license on the disc. So I was like, well, maybe when they put it on PS5, they'll put the whole game on there. Maybe the game just wasn't ready when they pressed the disc, so they didn't put all of it on there. But no, the PS5 version is also just a key. And I'm really sad, because I have a physical Indiana Jones collection on my shelf, like the box set of the movies, and I wanted to put the game there with it, because it's basically canon. And I did that with my Alien collection. Like, I put
Cool.
the Alien Switch game up with all the Blu-rays I have, and I'm just sad that I can't do that with Indiana Jones. So I'll play it digital, but now I'm going to wait for a sale. I would have bought it at full price physical, but
yeah, it's stuff like that too. I like obviously you can tell I like the display aspect of it as well.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Yeah, it makes me like, I was saying, like, we had to vacate our apartment because of a bed bug scare in other units, and I had to pack up all my collection so it didn't get sprayed with chemicals. And it was like, just seeing it all in bags somewhere else, and just like not being able to kind of like look at whatever I want and like find something off the shelf, whether it's a game or a movie or a book. Just like, and then as soon as it was back on the shelf and in the apartment, I felt calmer.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, everything's where it should be now.
Yeah. So. And it's like, because sometimes for me also, it's that I don't know what I want to play until I'm like looking at what I have. And with digital files, I feel like there's a sense in where you have to know what you're looking for. Because if you have hundreds, even some people have thousands of games on, say, like even my Steam account, like that's hard to navigate enough. But that's my issue with digital media as well. I like knowing, like, it's the Blockbuster thing, right? Like, you go and you look around and you see new things or old things and like, ooh, I haven't seen this before. I haven't played this yet. Like, that kind of an experience I like better. And that's also why I like the physical collecting and appreciate the organization here. But yeah.
Yeah, I still like to go to, here in Toronto, we have Video Games Plus, which is a little out of the way outside of Toronto a bit. It's like near Wilson Station, so like the north end of Toronto. You have to take like a bus to get there. But then there's also the Last Video one. Well, okay, there's a bunch of them, but the Last Video store I like to go to that has a good smattering of everything that still feels like Blockbuster is Bay Street Video, and it's literally at Bay and Bloor. So like, if anyone ever comes to Toronto who listens to this podcast, if you're not from here, come to Toronto, go to Bay and Bloor. Bay Street Video is right there, and they have like I want to say tens of thousands of like older movies, like stuff that's been released over the last like 50 years or whatever on disc, VHS. I mean, they don't have VHSs, but like DVDs, Blu-rays, that kind of stuff. But then they also have a wall of like new releases. And I just like, half the time I already know what I'm going in to buy or rent. But like, I do like looking at that new release shelf and just going like, oh, that's cool. Okay. It like gives me that Blockbuster feeling.
Yeah. I will also plug a video store. Plug sounds like I have anything to do with them. I just really like them.
Yeah, we're not sponsored, but that'd be nice if we were.
I don't even think they know I exist, but I just really like them. Vinegar Syndrome on Roncesvalles. So Vinegar Syndrome is a publishing company that publishes like older movies that are kind of like alt, like that didn't get a big release, like B tier movies, you know, like big with horror and stuff. And since I'm a big horror person, it's very like expansive, their library. So the store on Roncesvalles obviously has a section where it's their releases, but they also have like a Criterion section of like Criterion movies. They have like a Severn section for their releases. In the basement, they have laser discs and VHS tapes. And the people there are nice. It's really nice. It's really cool. Like if you are ever in Roncesvalles, I would highly recommend checking out Vinegar Syndrome. They're super cool. They're super nice. And they have like the coolest movies.
Oh my gosh, yeah. If this wasn't a video game podcast, I would go on forever about how I have the Tammy and the T-Rex and the what's the other one I have from Vinegar Syndrome? Oh, I picked up Howling 2. They did a 4K release of Howling 2.
They did. Nice.
I unashamedly love that entire franchise. I'm waiting with bated breath for them to do Howling 4 through 7 on like a Blu-ray because I think they've been talking about it for a long time and they just still haven't done it. And now I'm like sitting there on eBay like crying over the fact that the Blu-rays from Germany are like $90 a piece for those movies, like the later ones. Yeah. But anyway, so you talked about how you have a complete Dreamcast collection. With your other, I see like your NES and your DS section, for example, they're much smaller than the Dreamcast section. So where do you draw the line on completionist collections? So
I'm not a completionist. The Dreamcast collection is completed mostly because of my partner. He wanted to have a full Dreamcast collection after a certain point. For me personally, I like collecting the games I like, or the games that I think I want to play. It's not so much about completing a full like set. Maybe a series, if I like the series, like that's where I'll be completionist, if anything. But it's really difficult to have a full set of like basically a full video game collection on anything these days, especially things like Nintendo consoles. Freaking good luck. You know, PlayStation consoles, like Sony consoles, good luck. So that's not really at the top of my mind. It's more so like with retro consoles, it's easier because they'll have like, oh, we released 200 games. Oh, that's way more, you know, achievable. So I guess like, yeah, I would complete the series, not so much the whole collection. With the Dreamcast, though, it's especially, it's an outlier because the Dreamcast is special because it was weird and cool and really interesting when it came out and has all kinds of really strange games. So it's one of those things where if you don't go for the full collection, you might not even know the kind of weirdness that hides in the Dreamcast video game.
So when you say you complete series, is there like a specific series that you've completed that you're like really happy about or excited about, or?
Like Metal Gear Solid, obviously, but Metal Gear Solid is a series that comes out in various different versions, so I don't even think that's it. But I don't know. I just like to play series. Like I have the Persona games. I haven't gotten through all of them yet. I think I'm working backwards from Persona 5.
Right.
And yeah, I guess the next thing I want to complete is having Mr. Driller on all the consoles that I can. Currently, I have Mr. Driller on 4 consoles. I would like to get it on the rest of my consoles too. So if you consider that being a completionist, then maybe.
Yeah, I think everyone has their own definition for what complete means. Like I consider my Pokemon collection to be complete, even though it like excludes certain games. Like I have a version from each generation of like each game. Like I have Pokemon Red and then I have Gold. And then like I wouldn't consider like getting a copy of Silver or a copy of Blue to be complete. So whereas like, you know, getting Pokemon Blue, I mean, they've never done this, but like, let's say like with Mr. Driller, every release on every platform. Like I know there's some people that would consider the Metal Gear Solid collection that they just released, which has almost all the games up to 4, I think, or like up to 3 and then not including 4. I know there's a lot of people who would consider like if they got that box set and then the one that's coming out, that's going to have 4 and 5. And I think is it like Snake Eater or something like that? I think there's 3 more games to put out on a console, and then so that would be a considered complete collection. But then there's people who are like, well, I know I've got to own the NES version or the SNES version. As you can tell, I know nothing about the Metal Gear Solid series outside of the Snake is in Smash Bros. But
boy, is he here. I don't know. With like, that's the thing with a lot of like the newer games, they get re-released together, so it's. I don't know. It's a little strange to me to get in a mindset of, ooh, I'm collecting for, the modern consoles. It just doesn't that's just not how it sits in my mind. In my mind, the collection is more games that I want to play. For the Dreamcast collection, I said it was a full collection, every game that came out in North America, but obviously there are some outliers that aren't in there, which are like special editions or editions that were like limited release. There are things that we don't have because they are prohibitively expensive.
Right.
And the whole point of collecting video games for me and my partner is the reason we do retro instead of modern is because they're cheaper to collect for.
Yeah, but even now, like retro is like, especially with the pandemic, like it sounds like you got the Dreamcast collection complete before prices got really, really bad. Because I remember when COVID hit, like the price of everything went up because suddenly everyone who ever was nostalgic about anything ever in their life was suddenly shooting the price through the roof for like whatever, like whether it be Pokemon cards or VHSs started to go up, even DVDs and Blu-rays. Yeah, retro games, like for years, like they couldn't give away NES games at retro game stores, and then suddenly like Earthbound, which was like a $10 game for so many years, is now like $200-300.
Yeah.
So
I mean, yeah, we definitely saw that during COVID. It hit us like a ton of bricks, but thankfully, yeah, the Dreamcast collection was done September 9th, 2019. So we did not have to worry. And I know the date because, like I said, it was done before its 20th anniversary. Once the collection was complete and it was the 20th anniversary, we did have a Dreamcast themed party. It was fantastic. So cool. If I knew you back then, I would have invited you. There were themed cookies that looked like VMUs. Yeah. But, sorry, I lost my train of thought. It's gone. Goodbye.
Oh, well, we were talking about, just the prohibitively expensive cost. Like, collecting retro is cheaper. I collect a lot of modern stuff too. Like I collect for the Switch, but what I try to do with the Switch collection is like I wait for like a year or two after the game comes out for like there to be clearance prices on stuff that, they're just moving stock on. Mm-hmm. Because something I noticed with the DS and especially the 3DS is that like when the Switch came out and the 3DS was on its way out, nobody wanted those 3DS games. Like they did a remake of Luigi's Mansion. They did this game called Ever Oasis. They did like I think a Kirby game. And at the time I remember thinking like, and a Metroid game. They did a new Metroid remake. And I remember thinking at the time like, and a lot of people said this, like nobody wants these. People want these same games, but they want them on the Switch. Why would we buy these on an old console when we have this shiny new one on our shelf under our TV, right? And then a few years later, I was like, well, actually, some of those games are worth playing. But then you went to go back to like Luigi's Mansion 1 on the GameCube is like maybe $100. I didn't actually look that up. I just assume it's not. It's never in the circles of games that are really expensive on the GameCube. But when I went to go see if like Luigi's Mansion 1 on the 3DS was cheaper than that, it was actually much more expensive because nobody bought it. So I've just been like, I clued in for the Switch. I was like, some of these games I might want to play in the future.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be out in the rain or out in the cold with these games like in 10 years when I want to collect for the Switch when it's suddenly retro. So I've just been kind of getting ahead on my Switch collection. It's basically,
That's smart, honestly, because I think you're right. Like, I think that there's a very high possibility of that happening. Like when Switch becomes old enough that it's a retro, things just shoot up because they're not going to get any cheaper. It's Nintendo. They're not going to get much cheaper anyway. May as well buy it now.
Yeah, and I don't know how much longer we're going to get physical games consistently from a single console the way we are on the Switch. Like I think I read something like Nintendo is still 50-50 for physical digital, but I think everything else is 80-20 with 80% digital, which scares the hell out of me.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah.
It makes me uncomfortable. Yeah. But what you were saying, like you buy games because you want to play them, but you don't want to necessarily wait until they get expensive later on. There's a game like that I recently bought when we were in Montreal a couple of weeks ago. There's a video game store called Retro Montreal, I think. Very cool store, quite large. and they had a copy of Sega Gaga, which is a Japanese Sega Dreamcast game. It's a Japanese RPG where you play as, I think, because I haven't gotten into it yet because it's Japanese and I don't read or write Japanese, where you play, I think, as an executive that works at Sega who is trying to save the Dreamcast from killing Sega. So it's like a meta game, because they came out with this when the Dreamcast was losing money and it was about to go under, and they're like, well, this can be fun. And it's just one of those quirky things that came out on the Dreamcast near the end of its life. It's something that I've wanted for so long, finally found it. I don't have any way to play it right now because I don't speak the language and it's an RPG. But I bought it because you never see that game. Like in the wild, especially, like, sure, you can go on eBay, but I'm not an eBay collector. I'm a physical go into stores collector.
Plus eBay's got like a 25-30% upcharge on everything because people know, like, anyway, I always find stuff's more expensive on eBay regardless. So
yeah, absolutely. Like, so we did look up eBay prices for that game while we were at the store just to see like if it's worth it. And absolutely, it was cheaper than anything on eBay. Like, it was the version of the game that came with the special edition. So there was supposed to be a T-shirt and all this, like all these accoutrements, but the entire set would have been like, it was going on eBay for like $400 or so. I'm not spending $400 on a video game. I like them. I don't like them that much.
Yeah, that's fair.
But they didn't have all the extra accoutrement, so they kind of just charged for the game, but they also like knocked down the price a little bit, I think, just because I don't think the store really knew what they had, like how much of a chase item this is for people who collect Dreamcast. But yeah, cool find for us. I'm very excited to play it. I have no plans to play it anytime soon, but I had to get it because it was there.
Is that console region locked, or can you just play it on your North American Dreamcast?
It is region locked. You can, there are ways to jailbreak it. I'm not going to try.
That's fair. Yeah, that's my favorite thing too about the Switch is when I was in Japan, like I knew as long as it had English on the cartridge, I was like looking at the wall of Switch games I found, and this, because of how weak the yen was at least a year ago, and where the Canadian dollar was at the time, and the fact that there's like English on most cartridges, I found, I think it was Chocobo GP, the remake they did, and like to get it anywhere in Canada, importing from Japan or eBay or a store here, or depending on even if the North American version, the European version, the Jap, it was like $80+, but in Japan it was 1,700 yen, which at the time was equivalent to $17 Canadian. I was like, yeah, I want that.
Yeah. Oh, I missed the Japanese game prices.
Me too. But the retro game prices have surged a little bit. I picked up, I want to not admit this because it sounds really bad, but I really, really always wanted a copy of Pokemon Green, like the Japanese copy, just because we never got it here. And I didn't, I think I paid like the equivalent of 100 Canadian dollars when I heard like on a podcast 2 years before that, like the going price was like 30 or 40 bucks. And I was like, I want to get this before it's 200. So I'm buying it while I'm here.
Yeah.
So when in Rome, but.
Honestly, I don't have that much of an eye on like price for games. Like, I don't know what's reasonable. All I know is I have my own limit on how much I'll spend on video games. But my partner has a pretty good eye for like what's a good deal and what isn't. So I like to rely on him for that. But
that's fair.
If it just comes down to me, it's like, okay, I am not spending more than X dollars on any video game today. Like, that's mostly how I shop.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, even when I have my eye on a price, like Pokemon Green was a special case because it's a Pokemon game and those games are very special to me, but also like I'd saved up for that trip and like I knew I had like a video game budget where I was like, I'm going to spend, and everything else was so cheap that it was like splurging on one game. But for the most part, if I saw a Pokemon game here for $100, like a few years ago, I couldn't find all my Game Boy Advance games. I thought they were lost. So I went to a game store just to see like how much it was to kind of replace them. And like Pokemon Emerald alone was $130. And I was like, I would never pay $130 for a Pokemon game.
Jeez.
So,
damn. That's a lot of money for Pokemon.
Yeah, that's a lot of money for any video game. And even the fact that like the new Silent Hill game that they've just announced called Silent Hill F, which is set in Japan, the going Canadian price now is $99.99 before tax, which means it's in the US, it's going to go up to $80 instead of 70. So like games are just going up, and now apparently GTA 6 might be $100, which is going to be like 130 Canadian here. And like, at what point does like a new full price AAA game become too expensive?
Thanks, I hate it. I don't understand how these companies expect children to play these children's video games when they all cost over $100. When I was younger, growing up, my brother and I would literally go to flea markets and get N64 games, and we would trade in the game that we had before to get the new one, because that's how you got games. Like, I cannot imagine being a kid in this day and age and trying to play the new Zelda game and it being $80. Like, that's a lot of money for a video game, you know, especially in this economy. Kind of feel bad for them.
Yeah, and you can't even go to like a flea market or any place that has used video games. Like even Value Village and Goodwill have figured out that games are worth a lot of money, and they don't even put them on the shelf anymore. They send them to their eBay branch or whatever, and then they auction them off on eBay. So like kids can't even find, like we can't even do what we did when we were kids and like, yeah, go find an N64 game off the shelf, pay the $5 for it, bring it home, trade it in again next week for another $5 N64 game. It's just not possible anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of tragic, but it is what it is, unfortunately.
It might reassure you to know that there are still kids who want to be able to collect video games like that. My little cousin, ever since he was like 9 or 10, got into like retro video game collecting. I don't know where he didn't get it from me, because I didn't talk to him about retro video games. I thought they were too like nerdy for him, but he's really into it, and he's a teenager now. Like he's almost, he's like in the upper echelon of like teenager age now. Like he's old enough to like have a job and have his own like disposable income, and he's been priced out of the hobby for the most part, which is really sad, because when I was a teenager, I could still do that. But yeah.
I mean, it's good to know that, you know, kids can still find ways to play games, because they're supposed, like, not that they're supposed to be for kids, but like they should be accessible to kids.
For sure, 100%. So, do you have a holy grail? Like an item that's really hard to find, and when you do manage to find it anywhere, it has like, we've talking about this a lot, and I know you mentioned the Sega game. I think you said Sega Gaga.
Yeah,
sounded like what kind of grail for you, but I wondered if you had other grails.
I do. Sega Gaga, believe it or not, was not the holy grail. The holy grail was a pink Japanese Hello Kitty Dreamcast. It's pink clear plastic, like think the clear plastic N64s, but it's pink and Hello Kitty themed. It comes with a controller that matches, a VMU that matches, and a keyboard that matches. And the original set came with 2 Hello Kitty discs. One was a game, and the other one is like a Hello Kitty passport that I do not know what it is. It was a chase item. It was the holy grail. I did get it. My partner got it for me for Christmas this year, or this past Christmas. So if we had had this conversation in November, like 4 months ago, it would still be that chase item. Thankfully, I have it now. So I actually do have a Japanese Dreamcast. I can play Sega Gaga technically. I still don't speak Japanese, so that's still like the biggest barrier. But yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm trying to think about the absurdity of playing Sega Gaga, which I'm sure is probably like a T-rated game at least, on a console designed for like little kids, and then also, but on a console that was like, just like the Dreamcast is just so absurd, because like it's got so many great games on it that were ported later to other consoles when people realized how good they were, but the console itself just like crashed and burned. And
hey, Alien Front Online still has servers up. So they, fun fact, Dreamcast had an online thing. It
was one of the first to ever have it, right?
Yeah, to have that internet capability. Alien Front Online was one of the games that used that. They still have a community that puts up the server, I think once a month. They play or something like that. I can't remember because I'm not part of that community, but I am curious because I haven't actually played Alien Front Online with other people. I just never thought it was a possibility. It's the Dreamcast. But recently I found that no, those servers are still up. So that's kind of cool.
That is really cool. I think I also read something about, maybe it's Phantasy Star Online.
Am I saying Alien Front Online? Oh, I totally meant Phantasy Star Online.
Oh, no, I was just hopeful that there were multiple servers because I know.
Wait. No, I'm confusing both of them. They both are online. And they're both games that, yes, Alien. I did mean Alien Front Online.
Yeah, I think that's really cool that people like it's probably not the company that's doing it. It's like it's a fan server. Yeah. I know that they're doing that. I think on the Wii as well. And I think the Wii U and 3DS, when they shut down, fans immediately took it upon themselves, and Nintendo had to make a whole statement saying like they didn't say don't use them, but they were like, these aren't official.
Yeah.
And they were like wink wink.
Yeah.
So
you can use them, but we take no responsibility.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So representation is harder to find in older games. Does representation matter to you when it comes to games in your collection?
Bit of a weird question for me because I never looked to media for my representation growing up, because if I had, I would be a very sad queer brown child. Because in the early 2000s, there wasn't queer representation, let alone brown representation in media. So it's not important to me. Now, that's not to say it's not important. It is. But I think it depends on the kind of game. So if it's something like a lot of retro video games like Earthbound or Super Mario or Mr. Driller or Kirby, you know, like you're not looking for representation. You don't want representation. A Kirby is a Kirby is a Kirby. He's going to be pink. He's going to be round. He's going to be swallowing things. It's a Kirby. Yeah. When you're playing Earthbound, you play as like 4 little 10-year-olds. Like, sure, there's a girl one and there's a Chinese one. So there is a little bit of representation, which is like kind of interesting to see. But to me, it's more important when it's like an expansive universe with a large cast and it's somewhat modern. I can't exactly blame Japanese developers from the 80s and 90s for not putting a lot of representation in. It is what it is. Things were a certain way back then, but we're far from that now. So when it comes to games that are character driven, that are story driven, I do think like the representation matters. Because for example, in Metal Gear, if it was just straight white dudes, that would be not as an interesting game. It would take away a lot of the depths of a lot of characters. A game like Suda51's No More Heroes. Now, it's not so expansive and the cast isn't so big like Metal Gear, but they're still characters. It's still like largely like the charm of the characters is a large part. So representation in that game as well, I think, would be cool. And there is some. Suda51 is strange. His characters are strange. So it's not like, oh, there's all these people of color and all these queer people. It's just people are all kinds of things in those games. No one is a certain way. Like Travis Touchdown, I don't think is fully straight. That's my headcanon. I think he is queer. Games like Shenmue, where it did come out like back in the 90s, has a little bit of representation, which is good to see, because sometimes you don't just want to be playing a game that's just about Japanese people, like just entirely. Like obviously that's not a bad thing, but in terms of representation, it is nice to see when there's female characters, male characters, trans characters, when there's characters of color, when there's characters of different like sexualities and genders. But it does really depend on the kind of game. I don't want that from my Super Mario, because all I want to do is hit the little boxes and collect the little coins and kill the little Koopas. It's completely fantastical. When it's not fantastical, then yes, I do think it's nice to have a diversity for no other reason than it's just nicer to look at. It's just a nicer, deeper video game playing experience if there's a diversity there. You don't want to sit there and spend 30 hours plus on a game where there's zero diversity and it's just the same milquetoast, characters over and over and over. Now, I haven't played games like that, but I can imagine that would be kind of not that fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think of like Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, which has a trans character in it, and I think like that's a 30-hour game. And I think even though we talked about like your Marios where you're punching boxes, like I think Paper Mario being an RPG, when you're playing it and it's so story driven, like yeah, there's so much diversity of character. At least they're all papercraft and they all look kind of silly, but there's still like little pieces and bits of diversity in there, especially with Peach having her own story where she's kind of like dealing with sexual harassment from a computer, and there's like a trans girl whose sisters are like misgendering her the whole time. And but like it's just interesting to have that, like yeah, like in these silly like games where you don't think like, especially Japanese games where you don't think that representation is going to be there. It's nice to have it for sure.
It
Like you
is,
said.
yeah. But again, like if it's something like an old Zelda game, I'm not exactly hard up if I don't see a bunch of diversity, because half of those characters are not real creatures anyway. They're trees or fairies or grasslings or whatever. But yeah, I think for me, it does depend on the kind of game it is.
Yeah. Like a game that's based around the gameplay like Breath of the Wild versus a game that's based around story like Persona, or
Yes.
Metal Gear Solid. So yeah,
Exactly.
I understand that. I was wondering if we could move on to, because it sounded like you had quite a few pages of notes on this. I wanted to ask you what your queer game of the week is.
My queer game series of the week is Metal Gear Solid, because Metal Gear Solid is a very gay series, and I will die on this hill, but I don't think I have to, because I don't think anyone will disagree with me. It's so overtly queer.
What makes it queer? I've besides, like I said, I think I mentioned before the recording that I've only ever played like Smash Bros. So I don't really know too much about Snake outside of the fact that he hides under a box, and he's a bit sarcastic.
Yeah. So there are a lot of queer characters. I will start naming some. In MGS2, one of the villains is called Vamp. He's not called who drinks blood, but he's not called Vamp because he's a vampire. He's called Vamp because he's bisexual. Queer coded villains, that's not the most strange thing to come across, but it was kind of fun. Like it was neat. The biggest, I think, queer thing is just that like Snake is kind of gay. Like in MGS2, he and Otacon have this cute little like handshake, like a secret handshake thing. And then MGS4, they run off and adopt a kid and like raise the kid and run off into the sunset together. And just like they ride off into the sunset together at the end of the game. And throughout the game, what's it called? The thing where you set up the story, the framing device of MGS4 cuts back to Snake and Otacon in their little house with this little kid who makes them eggs every morning, kind of thing. Another queer person in MGS who reoccurs and is quite important is Strangelove. She is very gay for Boss, who's like Solid Snake's mom-ish. No, not Solid Snake, Big Boss's mom-ish figure. Kind of. She trained him. There was a weird sexual tension / like maternal figure thing. It was all very confusing. But Strangelove, who is a villain, her entire life thing is to try and bring Boss back to life, because that was the one person who can solve all of the problems. Doesn't happen. She can't bring Boss back to life. But yeah, it's very queer. Also, Strangelove ends up having a child with a man, and that child is Otacon, who I talked about being with Snake and raising a child. Another queer relationship is basically Big Boss and Miller in Peace Walker and MGS5, and they wrestled naked. They go on dates. There's literally a mission where you take Miller out on a date and bang him in a cardboard box. Also, Kojima is as out queer as Japanese celebrities ever get.
Yeah.
So it's not confirmed, but it's as confirmed as Japanese celebrities ever get. So queer developer, bunch of queer characters. Revolver Ocelot is so obsessed with Snake that it's a little bit, like, is this a love thing? What is this? Also, Ocelot is, just, he's literally called Revolver Ocelot and does the gun spinny thing in a way to show off to Snake. So it's like, what is that? You're just peacocking here. Yeah. So it's heavy subtext to the point where Ocelot, is that even subtext or is that just text?
Yeah, especially Japanese gaming in the 90s. That has to be the closest you can get to like confirming queer characters.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of them straight up make out and wrestle naked, and like some of them are confirmed queer. But it's funny to see because a lot of the queerness of Metal Gear is confused and like difficult, like the rest of the themes in the game are. I think that just speaks to the depth of the story and Kojima's storytelling, but it's not like a fun and flirty, like nice frolicky relationships. No, it's like it's what is going on. Everyone is confused about themselves, about everyone else. Maybe it's kind of gross at points, maybe it's kind of nice at points, like that kind of thing. So I think it's neat.
Yeah, I would never have thought of, I mean, again, I've never played Metal Gear Solid, but I never would have thought of them as queer games because, like, when I hear people talk about Metal Gear Solid in podcasts or YouTube videos or just like on the internet, they're just like, yeah, my macho gun game from Japan.
Yeah, it's not Call of Duty. I thought it was going to be like Call of Duty before I started playing it. No, they're like Metal Gear games are very deep. They're not like they are macho gun games, I guess. Like, I guess that's what you can take out of them. That is not at all what I got out of them. What I got was hours of crying over all the sadness.
That's fair. And you mentioned Kojima being, I don't, like I said, like, yeah, he's as confirmed queer as you can be, but he's also very, so even if he's not queer, he's definitely an ally. He's, I think he's trying to put Hunter Schafer into his next game, like maybe Death Stranding 2 or whatever his next project is. I think he's doing something with Xbox as well. And I just know I keep seeing videos of him like kind of swooning over her.
Yeah.
So
I follow him on Instagram and he is a very cryptic man. So I don't pretend to know what he's planning just because I think that's by design. He doesn't want you to know what he's planning, but I have seen him post a lot of Hunter Schafer and stuff. So I believe you. I think that's probably a good call.
Well, it has been a pleasure having you on the show. Is there anywhere people can find you if they want to follow you?
I guess on my Instagram, it's Betty.Valentine. Betty with the last E as a 3 and Valentine with the last E as a 3 as well. I don't stream yet, but I plan to change that before the end of the year. So maybe I'll plug my streaming channel at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'd love to have you back on, but I'm curious what kind of games. Are you going to try to stream your retro collection or stuff on Steam?
I think it's going to be what I feel like playing. I don't have because if I stream, it's going to be like, I play these video games anyway. If my friends want to hang out with me online and like play I don't know, you want to watch me play, because all of my friends, a lot of them don't want to play the games. They want to sit there and watch the games, which is fine because I don't mind playing. And hey, if you want to sit there and watch me play Persona 4 again, or Persona 3 or Persona 2, or I do have to do a replay of the Metal Gear series because I've only played them all once. And I think it'll be way less confusing if I do a second time because they aren't chronologically released. Yeah, so stuff like that. But also Dreamcast games, I wanna stream because they are some of my favorite things. If I can get a good translating system going, I would love to stream Sega Gaga. Yeah, we'll see.
That'd be cool. I'd watch that for sure. I mean, I'd watch any of it, but especially Sega Gaga. If there was a good like translation, maybe there's a fan translation out there. Who knows?
There is. I don't know too much about it. I just know that one exists. But I think it's like one of those things where you have to print it out.
Oh, yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for joining me for the show. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is fun.
And that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks to your avatars for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. I welcome you to check out the website, trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can also find the show on Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube under the handle @trueavatars, all one word, and on Instagram under trueavatars. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique, invalid, and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the website or the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, True Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.